in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, where crystalline chandeliers cast rainbows through penthouse windows and designer shoes clicked against marble floors, lived two branches of the Wellington family tree that hadn't spoken in 27 years. What had once been a dynasty built on love, shared dreams, and Sunday dinners around a mahogany table had fractured into a bitter chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. On the 47th floor of the prestigious Meridian Tower lived Eleanor Wellington Ashford, 72, draped in Chanel and surrounded by priceless art that couldn't fill the emptiness in her heart. Her penthouse overlooked Central Park, where autumn leaves danced like golden memories she'd tried so hard to forget. Eleanor's daughter, Victoria, had inherited not just her mother's striking cheekbones and sapphire eyes, but also her stubborn pride, a trait that had cost them dearly. 12 blocks away, in an elegant brownstone that had seen better days but still held traces of former grandeur, lived Eleanor's younger brother, Thomas Wellington. At 69, his silver hair caught the light streaming through tall windows as he tended to his beloved garden, the only place where his calloused hands, marked by years of choosing honest work over family money, could find peace. His son Marcus had grown up hearing whispered fragments of the family story, never quite understanding why Christmas stockings bore only 3 names instead of 7. The feud had begun with inheritance, as these stories often do. When patriarch Richard Wellington passed away, leaving behind a media empire worth hundreds of millions, the will had been contested. Eleanor, the eldest, felt entitled to control the family legacy. Thomas, the dreamer who'd always preferred books to board meetings, had wanted to sell everything and donate the proceeds to charity. Harsh words were spoken in mahogany-paneled lawyers' offices. Pride hardened into resentment. Resentment crystallized into a silence that stretched across decades. But fate, it seems, has a way of writing its own endings. On a crisp October morning, when the city was painted in amber and possibility, 8-year-old Sophie Chen was walking to school when she witnessed something that would change everything. A sleek black sedan had collided with a taxi at the intersection of 5th Avenue and 82nd Street. As sirens wailed in the distance, Sophie watched 2 elderly people emerge from different vehicles, both shaken, both afraid, both bleeding slightly from minor cuts. What Sophie saw next would stay with her forever. Without hesitation, the silver-haired man rushed to help the elegant woman, despite his own injuries. "Are you hurt?" Thomas asked Eleanor, not recognizing the sister he hadn't seen in 27 years. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf. That obscured her features. "I think I'm all right," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling not from pain, but from the familiar cadence she couldn't quite place. Thomas helped her to the sidewalk, his gentle hand steadying her as they waited for paramedics. In that moment, stripped of their armor of pride and circumstance, they were simply 2 humans caring for each other. Eleanor found herself studying the kind stranger's face. Something about his eyes, the way he held his head when he was concerned, reminded her of someone she'd spent her whole childhood adoring, then her entire adulthood trying to forget. The paramedics arrived, checked them both, and declared their injuries minor. As Thomas prepared to leave, Eleanor's scarf shifted in the autumn breeze. Their eyes met fully for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Recognition hit them like lightning, painful, illuminating, and impossible to ignore. Tommy, Leno's voice was barely a whisper, using the nickname she hadn't spoken since 1997, Ellie. Thomas felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. They stood there on the sidewalk, surrounded by the chaos of city life, while time seemed to stop. 27 years of silence stretched between them like a chasm. Yet in that moment, they saw not the adversaries they'd become, but the children who had once built blanket forts together and shared midnight secrets. The weeks that followed were tentative and painful. Eleanor found herself driving past Thomas's brownstone, never finding the courage to stop. Thomas drafted a dozen letters he never sent. Both had become experts at loving from a distance, but they'd forgotten how to love up close. It was Victoria who made the first move. Eleanor's daughter had been researching family genealogy for her own children and had stumbled upon old photographs her mother thought were hidden away. Pictures of Eleanor and Thomas as children, laughing on a beach in the Hamptons, their faces sun-kissed and carefree. Pictures of family Christmases where love seemed abundant and possible. "Mom," Victoria said one evening, finding Eleanor staring out at the city lights, "I found Uncle Thomas's address." Eleanor's perfectly manicured hands trembled. "Victoria, you don't understand the complexity of I understand that my children have an uncle they've never met," Victoria interrupted gently. "I understand that you taught me family was everything, but I'm raising my kids with half a family tree. And I understand that you've been crying every night since that accident." Meanwhile, Marcus Wellington was having a similar conversation with his father. The 45-year-old architect had grown up knowing he had an aunt somewhere in the city. A woman his father spoke of with a mixture of love and regret that Marcus had never quite understood. "Dad, life's too short," Marcus said, watching his father tend to his roses with unusual intensity. "If the accident taught us anything, it's that we're not guaranteed tomorrow." It began with a single white rose delivered to Eleanor's penthouse. No note, but she knew. Thomas had always known white roses were her favorite, even when they were children, and he'd steal them from neighbors' gardens to make her smile. Eleanor responded with a first-edition copy of Thomas's favorite book, To Kill a Mockingbird, delivered to his brownstone with a simple note. Some stories deserve better endings. The gifts continued for weeks. Small gestures that spoke louder than the angry words that had driven them apart. Eleanor sent expensive art supplies when she remembered Thomas's love of painting. Thomas sent rare orchids for the rooftop garden she'd mentioned having in a decades-old interview he'd read online. Each gift was a step across the chasm, a tentative bridge built of shared memories and cautious hope. The actual reunion happened on neutral ground. A small cafe in Central Park where they agreed to meet after weeks of exchanged gifts and carefully worded notes. Eleanor arrived first, dressed in understated elegance, but unable to hide her nervousness. Thomas came 5 minutes later, carrying a small, wrapped package. They sat across from each other, two people who had once known every secret in each other's hearts, now strangers navigating the geography of lost time. "I brought you something," Thomas said, sliding the package across the small table. Inside was a photograph Eleanor thought had been lost forever, the two of them at ages 10 and 7. Arms wrapped around each other, grinning toothlessly at their parents' camera. On the back, in Thomas's childhood handwriting, "Best friends forever." Eleanor's carefully controlled composure crumbled. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I thought I'd lost this. I thought I'd lost everything." "You did lose me, Ellie," Thomas said softly. "We lost each other, but maybe some things can be found again." They talked until the cafe closed, then walked through Central Park until the stars came out. They talked about their children, their regrets, their dreams deferred, and dreams achieved. They talked about their father and whether he would have wanted this division. They talked about forgiveness, not just for each other, but for themselves. The healing wasn't instant or perfect. There were awkward family dinners where old patterns of hurt surfaced before being gently set aside. There were moments when pride tried to rebuild the walls that kindness had torn down. But love, it turned out, was stronger than pride. Victoria and Marcus discovered they were more alike than different, both successful, both struggling to balance career and family, both hungry for the extended family they'd never known. Their children, Eleanor and Thomas's grandchildren, accepted their newfound relatives with the easy joy that only children possess. The real magic happened during the first Christmas they celebrated together in 28 years. Eleanor insisted on hosting in her penthouse, but she filled it with Thomas's handmade decorations and his famous eggnog recipe. The apartment that had been a monument to isolation became a home filled with laughter. As they sat around Eleanor's dining table, 3 generations of Wellingtons sharing stories and creating new memories, Thomas raised his glass. "To kindness," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "To the kindness of strangers who help us when we're hurt. To the kindness of children who show us what we've lost. To the kindness we show ourselves when we choose love over being right." Eleanor raised her glass, her eyes sparkling with tears and joy. "To family," she added. "To the family we're born into, and the family we choose to build, rebuild, and never let go of again." Today, the Wellington family feud is just a story they tell at dinner parties, a cautionary tale about pride with a happy ending about love. Eleanor and Thomas spend every Sunday together, alternating between his garden and her rooftop, teaching their grandchildren that family isn't just about blood, but about choosing each other again and again. They've learned that kindness isn't just about grand gestures, but about the daily choice to see the best in people, especially when they've hurt us. They've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but about refusing to let it steal their future. And sometimes, when the afternoon light catches them just right as they sit together watching their grandchildren play, you can see the ghost of those two children in the old photograph. Best friends forever, who found their way back to each other through the simple, revolutionary act of choosing love over pride. Because in the end, kindness doesn't just heal old wounds. It creates new possibilities for joy we never imagined were possible. Like and subscribe for more videos.